Hi everyone, my name is Kayla. I have a Bachelor of Health Science Naturopathy and I'm a naturopath at Kayla the Nurturing Naturopath. Welcome to my podcast Awareness. And today I have Andrew joining me and we're going to be talking about Together for Youth. Hi Andrew, how are you? Thank you for joining me today.
Hello, Kayla. I'm really good, thank you. And thanks very much for the opportunity to talk.
No worries, thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. Could you please tell us what Together for Youth is?
Yep, Together for Youth is a collaboration of for-purpose organisations who work in schools delivering wellbeing programs, so the social and emotional learning and transition to work programs. So it's a fairly new organisation and we're very excited to do things differently in that school sector.
Oh, that's amazing. It sounds really awesome. How long has it been going for?
So Together for Youth was basically a brainchild of a number of funding organisations across Sydney in 2020. They sort of pushed back on a number of organisations and sort of asked them to, see if they could work together because they were finding that there were a lot of organisations going to funders sort of saying, oh, look, we'd like money for this, we'd like money for that. And it was pretty much the same sort of things that they were asking for. So the funders said, look, can't you guys get together and actually work together? So that was a challenge taken on by a number of our organisations. They had a number of meetings where they, just looked at whether or not they could play in the same sand pit without throwing sand at each other. So very much, these organisations are traditionally in competition with each other to get into schools. So they looked at whether or not, there was some appetite to working together and collaborating across the sector. At that stage, they, spent about 6 months or so looking at that and decided, yeah, this is a possibility. And then in middle of 2021 is when I was appointed. So I come from a school background, being an ex-school principal. So I know the difficulties schools have, coordinating all these programs. So my job in 2021 was to turn this concept into a reality. So I worked very closely with the organisations. And then in 2021, 2022, sorry, we started delivering into schools. And in 2024, we're now delivering into 15 schools. And what we do is we coordinate the delivery of these programs. So we take all that administrative burden off schools and off teachers, and Together for Youth coordinates it with our providers, and then we organise the implementation and delivery into schools. So the schools, all they have to do is tell us what they want. We do all the organisation and deliver it to them. So it's a nice seamless approach for schools to actually get access to high-level quality organisations that actually talk to each other and work with each other.
Oh, that's really good. Yeah, because like you said, sort of they were all in competition with each other and now they're all collaborating and the schools don't sort of really have to do anything. It's just letting you know what they want and then you do it for them. So that's really
Very
cool.
much so. So yeah, my role is twofold. Number one, it's obviously coordinating with the schools. So, I talk to the schools and the schools are always leading this. So we don't go in with a package, say, you've got to take package A or package B. We actually go in, talk to the schools, listen to what the schools are saying to us as to their needs in the social and emotional transition to work space. And then, with my background as a principal, I actually can understand what they're really saying. So I work closely with them to coordinate a program. And then I go back out to our providers to see who can deliver. And then we deliver the program. So that's aspect one. Aspect two is very much working on sector improvement. So looking at these organisations and seeing how they can share information amongst each other to improve their delivery within the sector. So it's building the sector that, has heavily been, quite understandably, in competition with each other, so that they're now in co-opetition. So, they cooperate even though they recognise the fact that there is still a bit of competition there because they're all going for the same dollar, the same access to schools. But they understand that there's a bigger picture here rather than just their individual organisation. And that's all about delivering the best for students in schools.
Oh, that's amazing. And what are your focus areas?
So our focus areas are, as I say, is the well-being. So that's, all the social and emotional learning type programs. So whether that be boys, girls empowerment, whether it would be connections, so building connections within schools, so that emotional development of students, right through to transition into the workplace. So we have a number of providers that actually prepare students for life after school and life
Okay.
into the workplace as well. So one of the other things that we do at Together for Youth is we make sure those programs are coordinated. So our aim is to pick up a student at the beginning of schooling and then take them all the way through to the end of schooling so that they've got all these skills that workplaces or universities, etc., require of kids in a coordinated fashion. So we can make sure the student actually has all of those skills as they leave school, rather than the old ad hoc approach where, some students may have got some of the skills, other students may have got other skills, some students may have missed out altogether. By our approach of actually having our providers talking to each other, they actually hand over, oh, yeah, we did this with the students in year 7 this year. So when you pick them up in year 8, you can actually build from there with your program. So even though it may be a totally different program, they're still building on past learning, which is what normally happens with, math, science, and English, for example. So we're just moving that well-being, social and emotional learning space into that same coordinated delivery as, traditional subjects are.
Amazing, yeah, and getting them, like you said, from when they start to transitioning into the workforce is really great because yeah, you don't sort of get that. I know I didn't get that, so that's really cool. Yeah,
Yeah, as I
definitely.
say, and you're coming, totally open, from an ex-principal's background, it really was a case of, it's a bit of a shiny bus approach is is the term I use. It's sort of like, oh, yep, that program looks really good. Let's get that into the school and implement it. Oh, there's another good program. Let's get that in. And then you sort of had to look at, competing time and all of that sort of stuff. So, you ended up choosing programs off what looked good or what worked last year, for example. And these programs all come in, they do fantastic stuff with the students, no debate about that, but they don't coordinate because they're not under an umbrella where they're working together at that same stage. So, that's part of this revolution that we're bringing in with Together for Youth.
Amazing. My next question was actually, how do you help schools? But you've already kindly answered that because you said that you work with the school and what they need, and then you implement it seamlessly for them, so they don't have to do anything. They just let you know what they want. So that was good.
Yeah,
Could
and
you
that's
tell us
very much
about
it
like
because,
the
so I was
impact
just
you've
going to
made so
say,
far? Sorry.
yeah, no, I was just going to say, yeah, it's very much, as I said before, it's about working with the schools because the schools know their students, but it's about removing that administrative burden. So the school doesn't have to go searching for all of this sort of stuff. That's our job. So it's seamlessly working with the school and making time for the teachers to go back to teaching and learning, which is their core role, not sourcing great programs, which is now my role.
So good. Could you tell us the impact you've made so far?
Yeah, we've had some fantastic feedback from schools so far. A lot of the schools are really saying that it's coordinated their programs. They feel a lot more confident in what they're delivering to students because they know that these programs are coming in and they know these programs are talking to each other. Student feedback has been absolutely brilliant as to the program delivery. So we always get fantastic feedback after programs. And students are now starting to link those programs together as well. So this being our second year of full operation, students are now starting to see that there's a link between what they learnt last year and what they're learning this year as well. And we're going to do some independent evaluation of that through the University of New South Wales Centre for Social Impact. They're independently going to evaluate the delivery. So what's improved for the schools, what's improved for the teachers, and obviously, most importantly, what's improved for the students. So that's a work in progress that we're currently working with the CSI about.
Oh, cool. That sounds awesome. And like you said, the services you provide are to do with the well-being and the engagement and transition from school and the mentoring is right as well. Is that right?
That's correct. So yeah, we aim to pick up students right in their beginning. So really working on their social and emotional skills, their, all those soft skills which employers are talking about and, community wants students to have. So we work on all those soft skills and then we take them all the way through their schooling journey right until the end when they're looking at that transition away from school. So even though, some of our providers are working in that transition to workspace, the skills that students get may not be actually, directly related to work. It may just be confidence building and things like that as well. So, that's great for students who are going off to TAFE or off to university as well, building that confidence because they leave that sheltered world of a school where they've got all the staff, keenly looking after them into the big bad world where they're all by themselves. So, these skills are fantastic for students who are just going on to further education as much as they are for students going into the workplace.
Yeah, because like you said, like we sort of go from school, we're sort of, we've got the teachers and things to sort of on our own into the world, and it's like it's a huge sort of leap jump transition. So I think having that support and those skills for life are really important.
Absolutely. And that's why, the coordinated approach is really important as well, because it's about making sure that, we know, that all of those students are getting all of those skills they need because, there's always that call, as I say, from business, etc., for students to develop soft skills. As parents, we want our children to survive in the real world. But it's always been a bit of a hit and miss as to whether or not, they get those skills. So the Together for Youth approach makes sure students get those by coordinating all these services. And we can map the student through and go, yeah, we know you've learned, self-empowerment skills. We know you've learned, communication skills. We know you've learned resilience skills because you had this program and then this program and then this program in place. So that's where we're coming in.
Oh, that's amazing. Is there anything you wanted to recap on or talk about that we haven't spoken about yet?
No, look, I think it's been a fantastic little chat, and I think I've been able to, really explain what we're doing. And we're very excited to be in this space because, as I said, being an ex-school principal, I know the need for it.
Yeah.
And having someone outside the school coordinating this stuff and allowing schools to get on with their core job of teaching and learning, is just a perfect fit.
Yeah, beautiful. And for further information, should people go to the Together for Youth website?
Yeah, so you can go to the Together for Youth website, which is together, the number four, youth, all together. So togetherforyouth.org.au, and that takes you through to the website. Or they can just contact me directly. So it's andrew.turvey at togetherforyouth.org.au.
Thank you so much. And thank you for joining me today and making us more aware about Together for Youth. I really appreciate it.
No worries, Kayla. Thanks very much for the opportunity. It's been fantastic to chat.
No worries. Thank you so much. And thank you for everyone for listening. Have a great day. Take care. Bye bye.